Hey there, I'm Sara, a portrait and wedding photographer and your host for Wedding Secrets Unveiled. This is a podcast where we cut through the complexity of wedding planning, leaving you with everything you need to know directly from the industry experts. If you want to simplify your wedding planning while having fun, of course, you came to the right place. Join me while I guide you through your planning, starting from your engagement to your big day when you say, I do. After photographing for over 20 years, I am sharing with you tips and tricks to cut through the excess noise. Because I believe from the moment you said yes, your planning experience should be a magical time in your life. Here you'll find episodes that are fun, stress-free, and straight to the point with a fresh, honest take on the reality of what you really need to know about planning your perfect day. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Wedding Secrets Unveiled podcast, friends. I'm your host, Sara Zarella, and today we have Jane Rollins, who is the calligrapher, artist, and owner of Scribe. So, this episode today is going to be all about calligraphy, invitations, menus, seating charts, the proper etiquette about how to address your cards, when do you. Also, Jane's going to go over some trends about typeface, and also fonts and colors. We're really just going to break it down to you in regards to having a calligrapher and thinking about things that you can do for your wedding with calligraphy. So if you are thinking about the paper products at your wedding and you just want to dive in and investigate and think about some options, this is the podcast for you. Well, welcome back, podcast friends. Hello, Jane. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
You're in the hot seat.
I am.
This is definitely out of your comfort zone.
Very much so.
Well, before we get going and introduce you to our listeners, I just wanted to say that, so a little backstory, I have Jane here, and I'm excited for you all to meet and listen to all the information that she has for you today. Like I always say, we listen to your requests. A lot of you have wrote in, especially on our Instagram channels, and asked for us to have a calligrapher on and talk about all the process and the customization behind that. But with that said, Jane's shop has been up the road for me for many years. I used to have my studio right down the road from you. And I have since moved my studio to my house. We've known each other for many, many years. Tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, who you serve, and what you do in your business.
Jane Rollins, and I have been a calligraphy artist for more than 40 years. I've had a storefront studio gallery on Main Street in East Greenwich, Rhode Island, for 35 years. This is my 35th anniversary. I'm excited about that. It's a lot of longevity. I started by just with my little pen addressing envelopes for customers 35 years ago, when the options were black ink or black ink on white or off-white. The choices were pretty thin at the time. And calligraphy was pretty popular. People wanted to study it. People wanted to take it. People wanted to use it. And it was, no pun intended, it was flourishing. Then there became a trend for machine lettering, but it was still marketed as calligraphy. So that was a little bit of a cramp in everybody's style. So I still continue to do. I only have one hand that writes at a time, so I can serve as many people as I need to. I'm not looking to serve 100 people. I can't do that. So I've managed to keep going for quite a while. Then I branched into starting to design invitations. Pocket invitations became popular for a while. So I was actually creating pockets myself until they became manufactured. And their pockets are still pretty popular. So I design them, I make them. I also offer invitations that you can pick out fonts and paper and designs from a book. I do that. Then the day of, there are lots of design things that people like to do for their tables now, for their table settings. One of them is having pre-printed menus at each setting and personalized with a guest's name serves as a seating card. What's really become popular lately is, and a lot of us have had to learn how to work with this, shells, lettering on oyster shells, lettering on rocks, lettering on any kind of different kinds of memorabilia. And we're the ocean state, so it has a lot to do with that. And just most recently, I have been asked to do lettering on seaglass for place cards. That makes a stunning presentation. So I'm excited, actually, to start getting out my gold ink and lettering on glass, which is kind of fun. I've etched on mirrors. I've done mirror seating charts are really popular. I've figured out how to do those. So there's lots of skill sets that I've learned along the way. I just say yes and then figure out how to do it.
I love it. So there we are.
There we are.
Calligrapher artist.
That's right. Yes, I do.
That's perfectly stated.
Thank you.
So let's dive into some of the information that you just gave us and the trends and the process of calligraphy and how and what you've been seeing it been used in the wedding industry. So you touched upon trends. So right now, you said that you've been doing a lot of shells or seaglass, you said is trending right now? Yes.
Oyster shells are very popular to serve with the guest's name and the table number. For my end of it, they have to be brought to me treated. You can't just grab an oyster shell out of the ocean without, first of all, having it cleaned. And it has to have a treatment like painted or something that will seal the surface so that the ink sticks to it. And usually they'll apply a touch of gold leaf paint around it. It really is beautiful. It's really pretty. But you're limited as far as the materials that will not bleed, will not flake off, will not smear. So I have to do a lot of investigating for that. And I don't use markers. I'm a professional. So I will mix up a color. If people want a certain color, I'll mix up a color. So oyster shells have been extremely popular. Mussel shells, too, have been really popular. For a while, I was doing sand dollars. Those are a little challenging to write on a sand dollar.
Because it has that texture.
It's the texture thing, yeah. And as I said, I just recently got an inquiry for, and you can Google seaglass place cards, and they sell them. And you can't put them in a machine, so it has to be done by somebody's hand. So, and this latest client would like to have them in gold, so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I just did a quick Google. They're really pretty.
Yeah, they are lovely. And if you think about the table arrangement with the white shells with the gold or the sea glass all over, it's lovely.
Yeah, and some of the items that you said that's popular, it's funny, I'm going through my mind because I photograph them.
Right.
And you're right. It's popular, it's trendy, but I understand why. And we are the ocean state, so at least in this region,
right,
it makes sense.
Right.
What about some other trends? I mean, you said you've been in business for 35 years. Take us through the trends that you can go off of memory. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, that you've seen come in really hot. And, and the only reason why I say that is, as a listener, it's kind of like fashion. Like, at least if I was a listener and, which I am. Sometimes I listen to my show. Sometimes I cringe, but whatever. But I love to hear, especially from people who are professional, been around for a while, what trends they've seen before, because I love to bring trends back. And you see that a lot in home design and fashion. Trends always come back with a little spin. So for the listeners, tell us some trends that you've seen along your years that came in pretty hot. They may not be here now, but maybe for the listeners, they can think about how they can bring that back into maybe their wedding with a little bit of something different.
I think one of the things that I could cite are color combinations that you might not necessarily put together. I remember doing an invitation years back with the pocket folds that I used to create and develop and put together with a brown and blue combination. Then there was another with a pink and brown combination. I thought, that's kind of odd, but actually when you put it together, it looked kind of cool. So color combinations, and now there's the Pantone of the year we see. We see these colors that are cited that are the trendy colors. But I think what's happening with my clients who come into me and want to talk about what they want, and most of the time they want something simple and elegant.
That's timeless.
That's timeless, and I no bells and whistles, no, they like the raw decal edge paper, and not a lot of fufa.
Yeah.
So
I understand that,
and I appreciate that because it's a statement, and it's a cliche, but the invitation sets the tone.
Yes.
So That's kind of what I'm seeing coming in now, the ones that I've just worked on.
Do you service people all over the nation or just in our region?
Not all over the nation. It's interesting. There are geographic affects price. Geography affects your price point. So I keep my prices compatible and competitive with people in my area. You know, I'm not looking to outsource to other and break my price down for. You know, I've had somebody say, "Well, I can get that for $1 if I send it out to Oregon." Okay, it's your choice. It's okay. So no, I can only do just so much anyway.
Right.
And given, and I do some work for a couple of event planners who keep me pretty busy.
Yes.
And that way, I just do my job. I give them a bill. They pay me. Everybody's happy. But no, I'm not. I can only do just so much.
Right.
And when the season hits, I'm as busy as I can probably be.
Correct.
So, but I would never say no.
Right. Fair.
Call me.
Fair. Right. So going back to that classic timeless look, like you said, you've seen the trends come. Like right now, it's the seaglass and the shells and the nautical vibe of actually an object. But there is still always that timeless piece that you've seen carry out through the years. So explain some of those items that people can use at their wedding that are those timeless pieces that have been around forever.
Traditional place cards, traditional stand-up table numbers. What I'm finding also is that a lot of brides want to have a say in what they create on their table. They want to buy the little mirror stands. They want to. I just worked with a couple who did an unusual arrangement for their seating chart. They brought me paper that was going to be folded in half to look like a book, and each table was named after a chapter.
Oh, that's cute.
It was very cute, and she wanted to do a lot of the stuff herself. So they want to have, if they have the time, and I think it's great if they do, they want to have that input and that being able to put into their event. So I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, because there's also that difference with do-it-yourself versus having input and being completely involved in all aspects. And
right.
There's a very distinctive line
right.
with that. Because obviously, I think there's, that thought process of like, do it yourself, then you have to do it all. No, do it yourself could always be just also the idea. That you have your hands on every single thing, but you know what you have to learn when you realize that your handwriting is not the handwriting that needs to be on the item. So like you said, go grab the mirrors and then talk to someone like yourself and have you implement their idea.
It's the collaboration. I do like collaborating with my clients. It becomes more of a thing for them. But I do have a situation sometimes where, as I do teach classes as well. I teach intro to calligraphy. I teach different hands, historic hands.
So what do you mean by different hands? I think I know what you're about to say, but for some of the listeners, what do you mean by different hands?
Different hands that were prevalent during certain times in history.
Got it.
So the most popular hand that people want to learn is called the italic hand, which was popularized in the 1600s. It's Italian. It's the emergence of coming out of the Dark Ages, and it was the Italian Renaissance, and it's lovely. It's
light,
flowing.
and it's
light.
flowy, scrolling.
Exactly,
yes.
And the more flourishes, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I teach when people want to take a class. Because it's more functional than the Gothic hand, say. It gives you more mileage for your studying. Unfortunately, some people will see I can take a 6-week class and I can do my invitations.
Right.
And I'll say, okay, but you need the 6 weeks, and then I tell people if you are interested in taking a class to learn for its own sake, that's great. And if you have a specific goal in mind, like I want to address my invitations, that's great too. Give yourself a year.
Okay.
Give yourself a year to practice and learn. And I teach large lettering first, and you have to get smaller and smaller and smaller to fit on that envelope. So I do teach you beyond the basics.
Yeah, so that's a goal. So if someone who's listening really
Yep.
wants to do that portion,
Yep.
take a class, give themselves a year to practice.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's doable. It's definitely doable.
Actually, though, while we're talking about invitations, I think a lot of times when people hear calligraphy or calligrapher, they think of just the invitations. Because obviously that's That's the meat and the bones, right? What other pieces, you've kind of touched upon it, but just kind of give us a list. What other pieces, and I'm sure there's everything and anything you've done. Like you said, you don't say no, you just, you create. But give us some main stuff that people can start thinking about that they can use calligraphy at their wedding. And one of the things that's great about coming to somebody is it would be uniformed. It would be a nice, cohesive piece throughout their wedding. So you got the invitations, you got the place cards.
You got any kind of seating chart that you want to, if you want to make up a presentation or a statement, and you want to make a list of names. And one of the trends for that was lettering on mirrors, lettering on glass. Mirrors are tricky. You see double.
I want to talk about mirrors really quickly, not to completely interrupt you and hijack
It's okay.
your answer. But for anybody who is listening, mirrors are beautiful. I have to say, as a photographer, I really would like to start to see mirrors be cut out. They're reflective. So what I mean by that is visually, when I am trying to preserve your idea for your forever and for your generations, it's really hard for me to photograph a mirror because I can just see my reflection. I can see everything. However, you're like, okay, well, that's just a photograph. The actual use of it and the readers for their eyes, I see it time and time again. It's very hard for people to read a mirror. They see themselves. It's very, very, very hard. I almost wish that, and maybe it's out there, but there's a way that people could start using mirrors where they put a film on it almost, so it's not so reflective.
Right.
So they get that beautiful piece, but there's a film and you don't see the reflection.
Or a piece of glass with something behind it. You can still get the same kind of impression, but it's much better. And as a person who has to actually render the lettering, I have to look at myself, and if you don't look straight on, you can't see it.
Yes.
So when you get to the names that are at the bottom of the list, you have to crouch down to read it. You can't read the thing.
And honestly, that is a trend. So kind of going off of trends, one of my first questions to you is mirrors have been trending for a few years. So I say if you want to be a trendsetter, shy away from it because it's been around. Not that there's anything wrong. So I'm very sorry. If you are using a mirror, do not stop yourself. I don't want to do that. But they are on trend right now. And if somebody is listening who does not want to be on trend and just wants to be classic, I would say shy away from the mirrors because they have been on trend.
Agreed.
The classic is the paper.
The classic is the paper. And there are companies who can render them mechanically without having to have a calligrapher touch it. It just depends on what you want to spend. I create an heirloom. I use acid-free materials. I use ground-up stick ink. I will hand embellish on each piece. I'll put some actual gold on it. And you have, for $400 or $500 depending, you'll have an heirloom that you can frame. And you remember where people sat.
Right. So you had the seating chart. What else is the staples of
menus?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes people will want little signage in frames that say a remembrance table or a donation table. Donations have been made in our, to a nonprofit. Those any kind of informational, stationery-based kinds of things.
Especially too with the menus, having somebody that you can work with and collaborate with is really important because now, again, going back to trends, but I love this trend, is people are personalizing their menus.
That's right. And they use them as place settings. Correct.
So you actually, what we mean by that is your guests will come up to the table and pull their menu, but their name will be on it.
Right. And I'm able to take a pre-printed menu because it would be prohibitive to do all that by hand with a beautiful color, floral pattern, and I'll take one of those colors and I'll match it. And I can do that. And their name will be done in that color.
Right. So that's another thought process is when you're working with a calligrapher, you don't have to only create from scratch. You can actually add to what someone's already pre-purchased.
Right. Right.
So, that take me through the history of calligraphy, though. There has to be, because now this is with everything. There's so many other options out there, right? Because like you said, at one point, that was it. It's just the human hand, right? But now there's printers and there's crickets and there's all – you just eye-rolled me. So now I want to take me through through the history of it, and then I want to ask you about fonts. So take me through the history of calligraphy.
Well, it's kind of a 2,000-year history. Well, I mean, in my classes, when I teach historic hands, I go back to Roman lettering, which is what our alphabets and language is pretty much based on, that were chiseled in stone. Those were the tools that they had. Those are materials that they used, and that was the process. And then it sort of evolved from there. And depending upon calligraphy was actually written mostly for religious purposes, the creation for the Word of God. So it was only priests and monks who had that skill. They were the ones who could read and write. They were the literate people. It wasn't for the masses. And then it sort of evolved to be the manuscripts and Bibles, and the Bible actually was the beginning of the Gutenberg Bible. Was the first printing press was developed for that. But for contemporary use, I would say if you wanted to go back a couple of several generations, people's handwriting was a lot better than it is now.
I was waiting for you to get to that because I was wondering. Yes, so go on.
And all it would have required is somebody with neat penmanship to address those invitations, and then you didn't have all of the little inserts for your invitation. You had the official socially accepted wording. You were cordially invited to attend, bloody, bloody, bloody. And then underneath that was the favor of your reply is requested. Fold it up, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, have it handed to the butler, opened it up on the silver tray. People got out their stationery, and they wrote a letter of acceptance or regret to the invitees, to the hosts. There was no pre-printed reply card with a priest stamped on it with a menu choice. It was just, here you go, here's the invitation, right back. And they were expected to do that. And then, and this is the invitation industry, imposed that you had to start including a reply card. And you had to send it back. And then you have to put a stamp on it. And then you have to have all these activities. And you have to have an events card. And you have to have a separate reception card. And I think what I try to do when I either sell or make an invitation is to streamline that down. Do you have your wedding and reception in the same location? You don't need a separate reception card. You don't need another piece of paper, that kind of thing. So that, I mean, in terms of hand lettering, that's where it came into be.
And what about, though, your actual job itself through the years? I mean, has there been, now, like I said, there's a lot of different options out there other than just the handwritten. How does that affect your industry and the choices that are out there?
It has affected envelope addressing a lot because the digital addressing can be done in any conceivable color. They can even digitally print white ink on dark paper, which was something that you couldn't do. And I like writing white on dark. Mm-hmm. I like that process. So it becomes down to a matter of choice. And honestly, I don't know what people charge for digital addressing, but I know that the distinction between the two is pretty remarkable.
Right. So what we're going to do, Jane, is we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I want to talk about the differences with the printing versus the handwriting. And I want to talk about fonts because I'm sure you have a lot of opinions about fonts. And when somebody is out there picking and doing things on their own, right? No, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there has to be – let's educate our listeners a little bit about what can help them if they're going to do this on their own. And also let's educate them if they're going to work with someone like yourself or you and why you do certain things. So let's take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the differences that you see with printing versus handwriting, and let's talk about fonts. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you like what you're hearing, I encourage you to check out our website at sarazarella.com. And don't forget, you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. And I would so appreciate if you left a fabulous review on Apple Podcast. Even better, share it with a friend. It's a great way to show your support. And now, let's get back to the episode. Well, welcome back to Wedding Secrets Unveiled podcast, friends. So before the break, Jane was talking with us a little bit about calligraphy and the history of it and some trends that she's seen and where she's seen her industry go. But right before, you touched upon printing and the difference of printing and what you're seeing. And I want to talk a little bit about fonts. So educate us. Give it to us straight about what you see with the difference of printing versus handwriting and some fonts.
Well, we did talk a little bit about in my early days when everybody wanted to do calligraphy and they took a class and they would do it by hand. And then there was an emergence of this machine called Scribe that had a stylus and a pen, and you would type into the information, and it would actually mechanically make the letters on the envelope. But it was limited as far as style. It couldn't do a whole lot of different styles. They couldn't use waterproof ink. And it became obsolete within, I would say, probably a good decade or more. And when the digital printing emerged, it put that right out. There was no reason to have that anymore. The digital printing looks nice. But when we want to talk about fonts, there are a ton more fonts available to choose from now. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing, and I have to admit to my own bias, is there are some. I don't know how the heck they got into these books. Some of these designed fonts are just they're dreadful. Can you copy this? And I'm thinking, why would I? Why would I want to? And they're alphabets that are designed not based on an alphabet, but rather than I'm going to make the A this way, I'm going to make the B this way, I'm going to make the C this way, and maybe it'll all go together, as opposed to it doesn't look like an alphabet. You can't follow it. So if I have any say at all in any of the fonts that anybody picks for an invitation, and thereby I will end up having to copy some of that, I try to steer them away from the ones that do you not see how this is just really hard to read.
So that's the key. It's that it might be pretty to them, but it's really hard to read.
It's exotic looking because it's a throwback from what they're often seeing with type. Type doesn't have a personality per se. This is stuff that has a personality. It looks exotic. It looks like it's done by hand, but it looks like it's scribbled, and you can't follow a scribble. You know, at least I can't.
I mean, type in itself, I went to art school, so I had to study typeface. It's a whole
different thing.
It's a whole thing. So for the trained eye, or someone who is maybe creative, sometimes, especially with some of these people that are listening right now, this is all foreign to them. They don't have that thought process of the creative side that we just take for granted. So this is why I have this podcast, is to help you all that are listening. So, I guess the takeaway that you're trying to say is, you may find something that's really pretty, but maybe look at it. And sometimes there's ways to write out samples. So actually write out someone's address or actually write out your name and see what it looks like.
See if the postal carrier can read it.
Right. Ooh, didn't even think about that. Yes. Getting that invitation to point A to point B.
Yeah.
You just mentioned envelopes, right? Just the post office, just trying to read it. Let's talk about the actual envelope in regards to addressing it. There has to be some type of etiquette, and who goes first or what name goes first, or how does somebody even navigate that?
That's a good question, and I'm happy to help people and guide them for what is the socially acceptable verbiage. There are things that are traditional. It's generally the Mr. and Mrs. line is the traditional line. But I do have to accept and realize that there are some people that want to have the wife's name or the female name on the invitation too. So I will guide them as to the best way to do that. So instead of Mr. and Mrs. John Smith, sometimes I want them to say Mr. and Mrs. John and Mary Smith. That doesn't cut it. It'll be Mr. John Smith and Mrs. Mary Smith if they take the same name. Just to have it will just work a lot better that way. Social situations are different, so there needs to be some guidance on that. Divorced people, same-sex couples, all of that needs to sort of be navigated around, and I'm pretty careful with all of those kinds of things.
And there is proper etiquette out there.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with the wording of the invitation itself.
Who's hosting it?
Who's hosting it, exactly, does the inviting. That's usually my starting point. Do you want to include the groom's family on it? Do you want to put son of after the groom's name? And that can be sticky. That can be a sticky kind of situation. So I help them work all that out too.
Out of curiosity, what is the real proper etiquette when you just have names? Who goes first, male or female? The reason why I say that is just first names. Like, let's just say they're doing, I don't know. I mean, I'm not talking about the actual formal invitation. Just when okay, here's an example. When we're doing like wedding date slideshows or something, and you just want to put like Sally and Joe or Joe and Sally, what technically is supposed to go first?
I think it's a personal thing.
Okay, so there's not a technical...
Not for that. And sometimes when you have two back to the envelope thing, and you're inviting a guest and a guest of a guest, the guest that is your friend goes first. And then the guest of the guest would be secondary. So typically it's usually male name, female name, but that's flexible. That can be a fluid kind of thing.
Right. Because I've always thought of it too. It's like, is it ladies first or is it the male name?
In the invitation, the female name goes first.
Okay. Interesting.
You put the bride's name first. Yep.
And if it's someone who's hosting a wedding and it's both parents contributing it still goes bride's first.
Bride's name, then groom's family name. Cordially invite you to bloody.
Take me through the process of what you do. And what I mean by that is timelines. So if someone's listening to our show right now, they might be in the very beginning stages of planning their wedding, or they might be right in the middle of it, and they might just want to add some personal calligraphy touches. Take me to the process of when people need to reach out and your turnaround times.
For invitations, if I'm going to be designing and creating the invitations, it means I have to get materials, I have to do all that. I probably would like about 3 months ahead of time. 4 months might be ideal because you have to get the materials, do the design, do the prototype, and then mailing is people are getting a little too crazy about how early they mail their invitations, but
yes. So and I just take a deep sigh here. Let's talk about that really quickly. Again, I mean, we're not this end-all be-all over here, okay? So you could do whatever you want just because Jane and Sara say one thing. But listen, you're listening to this show because you want to be educated. And we have, between the two of us, close to 50-plus years of experience in the industry. We've seen a lot. But with that said, yes, I understand the thought process. And you can interrupt me if you think I'm wrong or not here. But of wanting to send out invitations very early or say the dates very early because you just want people to plan. There is a sweet spot. If you send it out too early, it actually does the opposite. People look at the date and they're just like, okay, that is down the road. Like, even if they want to be there, they don't know what's happening in their life or what's going on. And if you send it out too close, then obviously it defeats the purpose. Especially if you have people traveling, you don't want to send things out too far in advance. So I see the same thing, because I photograph images for, say, the dates, and people are trying to send them out before a year. Yeah, exactly. And I have to sit there and I have to educate people, and I say the sweet spot for people who have destination weddings and who are traveling is like at the most 10 months, at the most 8 months if you're local. Other than that, do not be sending things out before a year of your save the dates.
Agreed. As far as invitations go, particularly if a save the date has been sent out, the information is there. And if you have already let people know what the accommodation situation is, then there's no need to replicate that. So the invitation, I usually say, send it out 8 weeks before, get a reply date 4 weeks before. So you have an 8, 4, and then the day of.
Right.
And that kind of span.
And that's the same thing with save the dates. That's why I said 8. It's the same, instead of 8 weeks, it's 8 months.
8 months, right.
Now, if there's a lot of moving parts in a destination, like your guests, a lot of guests are coming, I don't see why you can't do 10 months or 9 months. But when you start doing like over a year, it's
too much time.
It's too much time, and I promise you this: you can even research it, right? Mm-hmm. But just coming from the industry and seeing the feedback, seeing it in practical way it works, it backfires on you.
And the doubly unfortunate thing is that no matter what you do, no matter how many hoops you jump through to get people to respond to you, there's inevitably going to be a time when guests are going to have to be contacted because they don't respond anyway, and that's unfortunate.
I know. And, it's just one of those things. If you are somebody who has been invited to a wedding and you have an RSVP, just RSVP. Like, just RSVP. And I don't know. I don't understand that concept. A lot of my family members do that. I don't get it. They've all been married, too. I don't understand.
No, I just worked with a couple recently, and they want to do the code. They want to put a code.
Oh, the QR code.
The QR code, which is apparently an option on some of the invitation companies. They can do that. And the groom just flat out said, "Well, geez, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't send the card back." Okay, that's okay.
Did he say why?
Didn't want to take the time.
Huh?
Yeah, it's just a piece of paper and having to write something down and put an envelope in. Put it in an envelope was very foreign to him.
Well, there is this thought process of instant gratification going on these days.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yes, even though you provide an envelope with a stamp, they have to physically put it in their mailbox, or they have to go down the postal office and they have to seal it. It's just another to-do.
Yep.
So there you go. So now you got the QR codes that you just have to scan and send it. But here's the thing. I think one of the reasons why it starts to happen in regards to you don't get the RSVPs is because just life. So this goes back down to what we were saying, which is if you send it out too soon, it's just literally forgotten. So like you said, just get ready to have to track down some people.
Right.
Yeah. But with that said, invitations, take me through both custom and if you have the books and ordering them.
Actually, the company that I work with, where I order the invitations, their turnaround time is pretty quick. And they've made the whole making a proof process very easy because it's online. I input the font, I input the design, I input the layout, and I can either take a screenshot of it and send it to the bride and say this is what it's going to look like, and then they ship in less than 2 weeks. They're pretty quick. I just have one job that I'm in the middle of doing now, and they came in pretty quickly. Custom is a good 5 months, I would say, because I have to. Another aspect that has affected my industry is the lack of materials. COVID set things back a long ways, and a lot of the paper that I used to use is not available anymore.
Still?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's so funny. I'm laughing to myself because I was listening to a podcast or something. I was definitely on the radio. I was listening to something on the radio. So usually when I'm driving, I listen to different podcasts or something. And the host was talking about, they were making a joke. They're like, all right, can we just stop with the COVID excuses of like it's not in stock?
Supply chain.
Yeah, the supply chain. And I started laughing. I'm like, you know what? Can we stop with that? Because I know my business was really affected by it too, especially with the albums and things like certain swatches and certain materials weren't. But now they are. But you're finding that it completely changed it.
It has affected it a lot. Yeah.
Wow.
This has been discontinued. This is out of stock.
Yeah.
We can't get this right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So still dealing with the materials.
Still dealing with it. Yes. So, I said, well, I can't do this, but I can do this. one of the companies that I get some of the envelopment, that's called envelopments, and I get the pocket folds for paper from, and they have a lovely supply. I'm looking for a certain color. Well, this is what we have, and it wasn't one of them at all. It's a lot of it's is discontinued, and they're trying to get back on their feet too. So, the fact that they even still exist is pretty good.
Well, so. I have to say, being a photographer and seeing the visual of the day of, because, I ask for my couples to bring their invitations and their save the dates and their menu cards and their place setting, because I do what we call the terminology in the industry, lay flats. So we do these beautiful, beautiful, and this is on trend right now in the photography world, but lay flats. We and even for the men too, we do lay flats with their details and their cufflinks, but we do a lot of stationery and we take the pictures of it. But the point where I'm going with this is, it gives me a glimpse of their beginning to end journey, right, of their wedding. Mm-hmm. And I get to see the first item that set the tone to announce their engagement or their wedding, and the whole reason why we're here to celebrate their beautiful day. And it's really lovely to see the pieces, because I am there the day of their wedding and I say, oh, wow, this makes sense. Like, whether it be the colors or whether it be the monogram or the textures that they're using. It's really pretty to see everybody's different personalities that are out there and their invitations.
What I have had recently in terms of the custom designs are a couple of a few clients who are older. It's the second time around. And very, very, very small weddings. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, one of them was 15 invitations. Mm-hmm. So I was able to create, it's whether you get 15 or 100, sometimes the price break is not distinctive, But I was able to really personalize to their satisfaction and create a tone for them specifically. And I did it from scratch. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, because especially when you are having a wedding that's smaller, you're able to invest in each item a little bit more because it's obviously less, right? Like the quantity's less. It's funny that you say that, because we have been seeing an influx of smaller weddings, and just because it's smaller doesn't mean they're not investing as much. It's actually they're actually investing more in the items that they have there, because it's quality over quantity.
Right.
And so as a photographer, whether I'm doing a 30-person wedding or, the 300-people wedding, has been a long time since I've done that. But, 125, 150 is an average. And then obviously when you start to get the 175, 200, that's above average. And then the 30-people wedding, Dan and I, we're doing a wedding next week, 30 people. 30 people on a Wednesday. But they had me there. They are not skimping out on photography. And I'm excited to see what they are having there, because usually when I walk into a 30-person wedding, what the items that are there are just very interesting to me, because they're able to just put a little bit more into it. But with that said, it's time for a wrap-up question. What are some key points that couples should be asking their calligrapher when they're inquiring to make sure that they are working with a professional company to ensure that their wedding day is an absolute perfect event?
I would suggest that people get samples, actual hand-on samples from the calligrapher. I like to talk to people too, but that's just developing that relationship. I would ask, is the ink waterproof? I use waterproof ink, which means that in misty weather it won't run. The ink won't run. And do you need extras? I would need extra envelopes for a 100 envelope job. I would like another 15 envelopes. So be prepared to supply a few extras for the calligrapher.
Those are great points.
Thank you.
See? I didn't even think of those, but I don't do what you do. That's why you're here. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of Wedding Secrets Unveiled. You helped our listeners become one step closer to their journey of a stress-free wedding planning process. Can you tell everybody where they could find you?
I'm located on Main Street in East Greenwich, 514 Main Street. If you're listening locally, I'm across from the CBS Plaza. I have limited hours, but I'm available by phone, 401-884-4150. I can be reached Jane at janescribe.com, and I answer emails very faithfully, very quickly.
And then also, too, for our listeners, we will have Jane's information on our episode show notes, which you can find on our blog and our website page at sarazarella.com/podcast. Thank you for listening to Wedding Secrets Unveiled. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, I want to tell you something. I encourage you to check out our website at sarazarella.com. We love photographing while having fun, of course. Check out our podcast page on our website for our show notes along with upcoming episodes with your local wedding experts. Listen in as we help you plan your epic event. And don't forget that you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening so you never miss an episode. I would so appreciate if you left a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Even better, share it with a friend. It's a great way to show your support and let us know what you think. If you know any wedding experts that would like to be a guest, we have a link directly on our website where they can let us know. Thank you for listening.